All right, hello. After we spoke at the deadline, I actually didn't anticipate speaking again so soon, but obviously over the last 48 hours, there's been a few things that require direct responses. First, let's talk about the incident over the weekend in Cleveland. Obviously unfortunate. You never want to see anything like that unfold on a baseball field. We were fortunate nobody was injured on either side, and obviously understand the Commissioner's Office role in doling out discipline, and at this time we'll support the process and let it unfold before seeing what is meted out. I will say, which coincidentally goes into the second topic of leadership and clubhouse culture. You did see a team on Saturday and Sunday rally around each other. You saw individual examples of leadership such as that from Andrew Vaughn in particular on the field, Michael Kopech playing peacemaker in that melee, and a team that faced adversity as a unit and came away with 2 victories that was hopefully something to build upon. Obviously, late last night, early this morning, there were reports from a former player criticizing some elements of our culture. I will get at that in a moment, those specific comments, but first I think it's important to note that for the past month, you've heard fairly directly from both Pedro and me and others that we realize we had a bit of a cultural problem in this clubhouse. That we didn't have a group that was all pulling the same direction, that was necessarily supporting each other or going about their business the way that we had wanted this team to go about it. It was something that we were upfront about for the last several weeks, something that we feel we've been in the process of addressing both at the trade deadline as well as since, and is something that we expect will continue to improve over the coming weeks. As I mentioned at the deadline, it was something that was a priority. In Cleveland, there was already a team meeting where many people spoke on the topic in the club or on the club to each other about who we want to be going forward and how we're going to go about being that on and off the field. So again, I understand why there's reports out there, but frankly, a lot of this stuff is old news in terms of some of the potential issues in that clubhouse and something that we've already started the effort of addressing. Frankly, the first rule of the clubhouse is what goes on in the clubhouse is supposed to stay there. I'm a big believer in that tenet. However, when an individual player casts aspersions and puts his name on it, I feel a responsibility to respond. Quite frankly, it's a little bit ironic that Keenan's the one saying this, because my last conversation with him face-to-face was a week ago in this clubhouse, where he sought me out to apologize for his unprofessional behavior. Unprofessional behavior that Pedro had called him out on and had an individual meeting with him about, and Keenan wanted to apologize for. I told him at the time I figured that was a one-off and not something that anyone needed to get into greater detail of, and he shared that he understood there was a trade deadline coming up and that if we moved him, he would be very interested in returning to us as a free agent. So for a number of reasons, the sanctity of the clubhouse, his own personal experience here, as well as what he expressed to me as his future desires, I was surprised to see the report this morning. As for the content of the report, unfortunately, I mentioned to you a few weeks ago that there's going to probably be some palace intrigue around here, and you had to be careful about sourcing and what kind of information was out there and who was saying what, and not getting both sides. As for the specifics he laid out there, I'll go one by them and explain why each of them were off. At no point over the course of this year has there been a reliever sleeping in the bullpen during a game. That's just wrong. We do have a position player, who has fairly serious sleep issues. And as part of our sports performance program of trying to address that issue, he has been given permission and in fact encouraged to sleep in the clubhouse at times. Earlier in the season, a couple of our veteran players approached me complaining about such behavior. To their credit, they thought they were trying to help the environment. And when I explained to them the background of the player and why we were doing that, they relented and understood. Perhaps that's something that got lost in translation in Keenan's report, but at no point have we had a player sleeping in the bullpen. Young player missed infield practice, and there were no repercussions. We did have a young player miss infield practice, and for the next 3 days he was out there doing infield practice as extra work, as a means of breaking through and holding him accountable for missing the practice and showing the importance of being there. The meeting in Toronto where only pitchers spoke, it's not true. Andrew Benintendi spoke during that meeting. It was, again, something that's supposed to stay in the clubhouse, but once you open the door and subject us to criticism, we're going to be a little more candid about it. So, again, no one in this organization for the last several weeks has run from the fact that we've had cultural issues and we need to improve the leadership in that room. We're going to continue to strive to get better in that area, but one thing we're not going to do is stand idly by while false reports are put out there about the character of the men that remain in that room.
Rick?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Is it fair to ask if you were addressing issues in May, June, and July, and before the trading deadline, on the cultural issues in your ball club?
Is it fair to say whether we were addressing?
Is it fair to ask?
You can ask anything you want. You know that. It was absolutely a subject of frequent conversation between Pedro and players, between myself and players. Kenny had conversations with various players. We knew where we were headed. Look, as I'd mentioned at some point in one of our recent scrums, you learn a lot about people's character during times of adversity. And unfortunately, we got off to a wretched start. And the way the room responded was not the way we had hoped. And we realized we had some issues that needed to be addressed. Again, we started that process over the last several weeks, and it's an area that we expect to continue to improve on.
So you would add together one of the other things said about no rules, no accountability, even dispute.
100%. 100%.
So even if you've articulated it before, to whatever extent, can you do it now? What is the culture that is? What is? Not
I mean,
right
people who are,
about
again, the people who have been here on a regular basis have heard this repeatedly. The kind of culture we want to create is one that not only has accountability, but has people all pulling the same direction. People that are willing to understand. We have players from different backgrounds. We have players with different needs. We have players with different strengths and some weaknesses, and that we're all trying to pull the same direction to getting the best out of them all in terms of winning ball games. Anyone who tries to thwart that effort or makes it more about me than the team, meaning the individual as opposed to the team, doesn't fit to what we're trying to do. And those are the type of players that we've prioritized in the draft. That's what we preach in player development, and it's what is going to be a focus going forward and continue to be a focus in player acquisition going forward.
So where are the White Sox on that?
We're work in progress. We're work in progress. We had a problem. We've addressed a good portion of it, and we've got to continue to do it.
Rick, you put this roster together. I know there's consensus for it. Where have you gone wrong then in trying to kind of create a cohesive roster and clubhouse?
Again, I think a part of the element in this is the adversity. I mean, when we were rolling in 21, we had some issues. We had some clubhouse issues. We had some disputes along the way in 21. But things were going so well, we were able to overcome them. My mistake, if I want to put one or put many on me if you'd like, is that I perhaps overestimated the strength in that room to deal with adversity. Again, we got off to a wretched start and things snowballed from there. I thought we had the strength and the presence to pull ourselves out from under it and keep, instead of throwing stones, like pull together and bond over the adversity, us against the world kind of thing, and it didn't happen.
Has that been, I'm trying to be melodramatic,
Uh-huh.
a grave disappointment for you, the disappointment of your career? Or?
I mean, I've made no secret about the level of disappointment, not just for myself, but throughout this organization about this past season. I think somebody asked me about this. I think Vinny asked me about this about a month ago, and terms of ranking the disappointments, I'd rather just wait till the end of the year. You know, we had 2 nice wins over the weekend. We're going to try to beat the Yankees tonight. I've got 26 guys and a bunch of coaches in there that hopefully their focus is strictly on beating the Yankees. I don't want to be out here talking about, you know, future developments or disappointment or macro themes when, frankly, let them win a ball game. Let them go out and put on a good show and win a ball game tonight.
There's a report that Grandal slapped Tim Anderson. It's out today.
Yeah, I heard Grandal denied that
yeah,
happening, and
yeah.
but he told you it didn't happen,
Well,
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm asking you.
that's accurate. I mean, you're not suggesting he lied to you, I hope.
I'm asking you.
How concerned are you right now about Tim Anderson's mental well-being?
I'm worried about all our mental well-being right now. Look, that's a serious topic for anybody, any player who is dealing with being under the spotlight or dealing with underachievement or dealing with disappointment. That's a serious consideration for anyone. You've seen it league-wide. I think this may, if I'm not mistaken, this was the first year that the league was permitting IL placements for mental health concerns, which shows the progress we've made as a league to understanding the importance of helping players through issues like that. So it's real for everyone out there. It's not easy when there's a third deck out there and you got everyone on Twitter or whatever the cesspool is called now, to, you know, giving you feedback instantaneously about your performance. It's not an easy way to live your life. So I'm glad that mental health is something that the league acknowledges, that, you know, we're concerned about in that room, and that you as a reporter acknowledge as a legitimate concern for people.
As far as
How
valid,
is the evolution of the culture that you guys want to have been affected by multiple managerial changes and new regimes in there?
Well, look, let's talk strictly about Pedro's regime, because that's the most important one right now. That's the one that has the most impact on where we are and where we go moving forward. I do think it takes a little bit of time for any manager, whether it's their first job, you know, or just new to the organization, to implement the culture that they want. I know early on, especially being a very veteran club, a club that had had some success together, that Pedro early on wanted to sort of observe and get to know and sort of understand what the culture was before he started putting thumbprints all over it. Again, towards the end of spring and early in the season, we started having conversations about areas where we needed to get better, and that, again, over the last several weeks and months has been a big part of the effort he's undertaken to get us better.
Is those, you know, the taking time of it, is that just the nature of the beast, or is that speak to maybe the reception level, or the level of receptiveness to your players? So
I'm not sure I follow. I'm sorry.
So it takes time to implement the culture.
Yes.
It makes sense. But is that the nature of the beast, or do the White Sox have a couple players where receptiveness is?
No, I don't think anymore. I think that the culture, any individual's imprint on a culture takes time. There has to be a level of trust built. There has to be a level of articulating priorities, holding people accountable, and you know, practicing what you preach, and that takes some time. I also understand the notion of coming into a veteran club, of what is supposed to be a good club, and getting the lay of the land before on, you know, day one dropping the hammer. You probably recall, you know, when Tony was named manager, one of the concerns was from the outside world was that, you know, here was this young, fun club, and this guy was going to come in and drop the hammer with all these rules and stifle their personalities from the start. Tony took time on the way in too to assess everything and give guys a chance to be who they were and give them a chance to breathe. And you know, we were rewarded that year with a division championship under his helm. So I get needing to take time and assess things, and then, you know, obviously things didn't go this year the way we wanted them to. So there has to be changes.
with
The action on first, seeing the comments and just kind of the way it's depicted.
I was shocked. Again, coming from Key, I was shocked. Because, again, literally 8 days ago, I'm sitting behind this wall, and he's telling me he wants to be back. And he's apologizing for his own unprofessional conduct, which, again, I thought was, frankly, relatively minor. But Pedro grabbed him up on it, and Pedro, you know, I think gave it to him pretty good about what he did was unacceptable. So I was very surprised from hearing from a guy who really had no issue with while he was here and wanted to return, and he himself was held accountable for certain rule violations, let's say, and for him to be pointing the finger that wasn't happening here. I was frankly confused by it.
We know
You get,
that
Rick,
Pedro.
why a lot of people.
There you go.
Sorry.
Go ahead,
You
Paul.
get why a lot of people don't believe you should be the one to fix this. Since you've been
Absolutely.
here.
Absolutely.
And what would you say to that? I mean, it's.
I would say to that, I absolutely get that. It's the nature of pro sports. The fact of the matter is, I probably wasn't as smart as everyone thought I was when I was winning Executive of the Year a couple of years ago, or when Publications was naming me whatever the hell you named me, Chicago Sports Person of the Year. And the odds are I'm probably not as stupid as people think I am now. But this is the nature of the beast, the nature of pro sports. And look, at the end of the day, whether I'm here or not, it's going to come down to any of Jerry Reinsdorf or Kenny Williams or myself feeling I'm not the right guy going forward.
You wouldn't step down or anything.
Again, we're trying to beat the Yankees tonight. Let's see what happens over the next few weeks.
Are you, and then more broadly, just the front office, have you been good at articulating expectations? It needs to be like this, and then following through on that? Do you think you're doing a good job
Whom?
about the culture, about things that have been allowed to lapse or that did lapse? Did you do enough to?
My answer is simple because we're not where we want to be, so I didn't do enough. It's that simple. Like if we were where we wanted to be, then I'd be much happier about the whole situation, but we're not, so I take responsibility for that.
Are you gonna step up your?
We've had numerous conversations over the last few months. Numerous conversations, numerous meetings one-on-one with various players, coaches, larger conversations with larger groups about what we're going to do moving forward. So it's been an important priority, and now I need to get to Bruce before he jumps on me.
We know.
Bruce.
We know that. That Pedro, the first baseman, Abreu, was not a verbal leader, but had tremendous leadership ability. Just by the way, went about his game. Might that have been something that was missed in here more than people know?
I think it's an easy thing to point to. I don't think that it being easy makes it accurate, though. Leaders by example are important. I think we do have other leaders who lead by example. Sometimes you need someone who's willing to stand up for what is right and fight against those who may be pulling you the wrong direction. And that's probably what we lacked some this year. I don't want to put that on Pito saying that's something he would have done, but he absolutely led by example, no doubt.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.